Let's hear it for the panel. We got John Dugan. Marilyn Burns. And Gunnar Hansen.
Hey everybody.
Glad you guys are coming out. First of all, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when it came out, very controversial. There's been so many more graphic horror films since. What about Texas Chainsaw Massacre makes it that it still connects with audiences?
Well, I think part of it is that there is no, because it's not competing with so I guess you need the microphone. And I think that's a big thing because it depends on its content and structure to horrify you. It doesn't depend on the gore, so the effects don't get outdated. And I think that's a real part of why the film is still important to look. Plus, I think the movie is just murderously terrible.
Perhaps part of the what makes it so frightening is the gore is all in your sick mind. This is really not on. Is this turned on? I don't need to know. Really, me and Ethel Horman, we don't know what these things are. But the gore is all in your mind. It's not there, and you'll talk to fans who've seen the movie dozens of times that swear that they see the meat hook go into Terry McMillan's back, or that they see Paul Martin get cut in half by Gunnar. You don't see that stuff. You see it from the opposite side, but there's no. So all the horror is in it is really in your brain. It's not really on camera, on the screen. Possibly, I mean that's a thought. Yeah. So. Once again, Neil Jones, very well organized. But in something like that.
I think that's what makes it scary. I also think that what makes Chainsaw scary is the pace. There's never a break for the heroine to stop and kiss her boyfriend. There's never one of the, a sex scene to, break. It's all about the chase, and it just keeps going. It's relentless, and so you're all caught up in it, and that's what makes it so real. And it's just it's all the frenzy, and your mind takes you to the places. Also, the title itself, when you're walking into the movie, there's going to be something going on here with the Chainsaw Massacre. Now, one thing I want to say about Texas Chainsaw 3D. I mean, I bet y'all are real curious. Why in the world didn't they use Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D? And I found out the reason. They didn't use the word massacre because they didn't want to spoil the ending for it.
Now, you all mentioned the gore that's mostly in your mind, but when you guys read the script, did you think there would be more gore in the film?
In the first one,
yeah.
Or Chainsaw? I thought it was the gore. First of all, as a chainsaw thing. I didn't need to read the script. That already explained it. Your mind takes you with that. Oh, wait a minute. I gotta take that back. I knew it had a chainsaw in it. Chainsaw wasn't in the title. I think the script I read was, it was Leatherface, then it was Head Cheese. I really wanted to be in Head Cheese. But the topper was scum of the earth. And I thought, oh gosh, I could call Mommy and Daddy and say, Mom, Daddy, I'm in scum of the earth! And I know they'd be proud. Equally so with Head Cheese. No, I didn't have to read the script. I knew there was a chainsaw in it. That was gory enough. That your mind takes you to terrible places. And, you know, I knew from the structure of, yeah, your mind's going, it might not be on the page, but you're thinking, oh dear, just all, how the people, the meat hook scene, that didn't give you an idea that it might kind of dig into the psyche, even though, I don't know.
The script is actually a lot gorier than the movies. There are scenes in the script, for instance, the whole kitchen scene in the meat hook. There's stuff in that that's not in the script. When you see her get put on the hook, her is hanging on another meat hook on the wall, already half skinned, and then it takes a certain cutting. So a lot of that. So certainly, I think we were expecting it to be a gore movie because the script was more explicit than film. And by the way, the film in the contract, the film was called, our contract said, film called Leatherface or Head Cheese. The script said Leatherface, and I kept hoping they'd stick with Leatherface and not go back to Head Cheese because I wanted the title role. And I didn't want to be known as Head Cheese, you know.
Get a lot of mileage out of that Head Cheese thing.
Besides, you were the only one who ate Head Cheese.
I did, yes, I did. Yeah. Ed, or was it you that fed it to me?
I fed it to you.
Yeah. Tasty. I love that cheese.
You actually mentioned that you like to tell your family you were in scum of the earth. What was the reaction to like your family and your friends after when the movie came out?
My friends thought it was cool. My parents were horrified. I guess they were proud. My parents actually went to see it. I was shocked. My mother was, of course, being a mother, was like, oh, I'm so bad. You know. And my father was like, she's pretty much. But he would, my father, the whole idea of me being an actor would just irritate the hell out of him. He would he'd come home for Christmas and everybody's sitting around and he'd just look at me and go, emote for us, John. Go ahead, you're an actor, emote. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did you emote? You could have turned him emote.
Yeah, oh, I emote all right. I won't say, but you know. But he wasn't real pleased with just the entire idea of me being an actor. So it wouldn't have mattered what I did to my father. But of course, my mother, being a mother, was very proud.
My mother said that my father and I took you on the Bridge Club to your movie. And she then said, Marilyn, when we left, nobody said a thing. And I said, well, didn't anybody, comment whether they liked it or didn't like it? She said, no, it just was the strangest thing. Nobody said anything. And I just said, oh, and it was a little uncomfortable. But I knew they were proud I was in the movie. It's just that it was one of those movies where I guess you didn't comment on. That sort of stunned me. What did your parents think?
Well, my father rolled over in his grave. Well, my father was long since dead, so he didn't care. But my friends thought it was a hoot, the whole idea of it. And so when we went to when this movie opened in the theater, a bunch of us all went together, including my mother. And I I convinced the theater owner that I'd been in the movie, so they let me in free. And we went in there, and we watched this movie, and afterwards I asked my mother, I said, so were you scared? And she said, no. And I said, why? And she said, because I knew that was my baby. Yeah, she always thought it was just the most charming thing in the world that her son had been in a horror movie. I mean, it just didn't matter to her.
Get a question in the audience? Right here.
Hey, Drew, you still got the dactyls? I know what I'm going for in Halloween.
Well, I first went and worked for my voice coach. Well, the problem for me was I wasn't very experienced. I'd done some theater stuff in college, but I didn't have a lot of experience. And so that having the mask was actually really good for me, because it would never have dawned on me that, you know, an actor has three fundamental tools: face, voice, body. To me, it was all voice. You know, I just didn't get that part. And so once I realized that I was not going to have face or voice, it pretty much forced me to realize that all I had was the body, you know, my body to work with, and a few others scattered about set. So what I did was I actually went to this, it's called the Austin State School, and it was a residential campus for retarded persons. And I went there. It was open campus. You could drive in. I just parked the car and I walked around, and you'd see residents walking around. And I just watched people, how they held their bodies, how they moved. And I would watch what they did, and I would try out different things, whether it was just the way I held my arm, or maybe the way the rhythm of someone's step, or the way someone tilted his head, whatever it was. I mean, I tried to see which ones of those worked for me, because the problem is you don't want to like acquire all these individual tics that don't mean anything, that don't work together. So I was there for a couple of days, and I just watched people and tried to find those elements physically, both of the way people's postures, but also the way they actually move their body, until I acquired a set that I thought were coherent for me. And then I was walking on the campus, and I saw two people who were obviously staff coming toward me. So I summoned up my inner Leatherface, and I went into this posture of Leatherface and walked past them. And I realized that they looked at me like I was another resident. And that's when I thought, all right, I have, you know, that's what I want. So that's how I did it.
I was a theater actor. My first film as well. Was it yours too? Okay, well, I didn't really know how film worked. So I had to be in Austin like 3 weeks before they started shooting my scenes because of the makeup design. But I spent a lot of time on set just figuring out how film works, first off, because it's a totally different genre from theater acting. And I'd done a lot of theater. I'd gone to theater school, intense acting classes, and I'd done a lot of physical acting, and all I really had, because Grandpa says nothing, was my body, and again, my face, but there wasn't a lot of movement in the makeup back in those days. It was pretty rigid. So first off, I wanted to see how film works. And then I would go see the dailies with Toby and Kim in the evening. And then the only other thing, really, I mean, what can you do to prepare to be Grandpa when you're only 20 years old, for one thing? But Kim talked to me about what he was looking for as far as what he wanted out of Grandpa. He said, you're embryonic. You have gotten so old that you're once again an infant or even an embryo, he talked about it. Have you ever seen a child nurse before? And I had an older sister that had 3 children. So I had seen a child nurse. I had a younger brother and all that. And that was pretty much it. And to get locked into the embryonic thing. But I really wanted to know how film worked. But so the preparation I did was probably being on the set, just observing what it was like, what the distractions may be, you know, the camera and the lights all around you. And I guess that answers your question there.
Well, I definitely was very involved in acting. When I got the part, I also knew that when a director doesn't really know you, he doesn't know what you can do. And I was a fan of horror and mystery and the old Nancy Drew, Perry Mason, haunted houses, you know, any suspense thriller, I had it. And so, and I watched a lot of movies, and I always saw in horror movies that maybe the girl wasn't, or the guy wasn't giving, it wasn't an appropriate response for what was happening to him. And I didn't want that to happen because it was so disappointing to me. So, and since the director didn't know me, knew me as he asked me, but he didn't know what I could do, I decided I wanted this to be intense and to keep, you know, make it as real as possible. And so I gave the director, every time I could, I guess a 10 in the performance. So he could say, God, that's way over the top, that's inappropriate for right now. Bring it down some. And, but it's because of that way he wouldn't go, well, that's the best the girl can do. I guess we'll have to go with it. You know, I could see that happening. I've been on films before, and I could see where, you know, if they didn't get what they want and they weren't relating to you or speaking to you, they're just in a hurry, and they go, oh, well, that'll work. Well, I didn't want it to be that, you know, that'll work. So every time I tried to give as high as I could, one of the films at the beginning, one of the first things that was involved was running into the gas station. Well, I'm running into the gas station because some maniac out there is chasing me with a chainsaw. I'm terrified, right? But you know, we're just on the set, it's night, and they expect me just to open the door and go, woo! Shoot, that was a close one, you know? So, I mean, I come in and I run into the door and I smash into the floor and continue to topple the cameraman over, and the cameramen, and they're all, you know, going, well, Marilyn, you know, let's tone this down, you know, and they just have this short space for me to barge in. So we did many, many, many takes because I didn't want it to look where she just comes in and goes, whoosh. Boy, you know, that's not real. That's gonna ruin everything at that. So somehow, after many takes became, I mean, bloody knees and messed up pants, I finally got where I wasn't flying into the cameraman, but I could still fly it and get down and, you know, try and get together. But it took a whole night of, you know, to make it look real and to not ruin the set. But it worked, because one of the worst things, I think, in a horror film is when the suspense is all built up and then, oh, well, they must be on another shot by now, is all I can think when I see those movies.
I have to say something about Marilyn. I mentioned this yesterday. I talked to Daniel Pearl recently, who was the cinematographer, and he said in the shot where she comes in, there's a moment where she kind of is looking at the barbecue and just has a little bit of moment to sort of come to her senses and realize what's going on. He had a fresh roll of film in the camera, and Toby said action, and she started doing her reaction shot, and one roll of film is 11 minutes on 16 millimeter, and Marilyn did that take 11 minutes long. She just stayed in the character, and then Daniel said he knew that we were out of film because the thing is going slap, 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 slap. And he looks over at Toby because he's thinking, you know, we need 30 seconds so that we can get that 5 seconds that we want. And why hasn't he cut? Said cut. And he looks over at Toby, and Toby is staring at Marilyn going. He's absolutely mesmerized by what she's doing.
Was there any personal experiences or anything that you had to draw upon to get into that frame of mind? I mean, how would you look so scared?
Let's not talk about method here.
What?
Not after that nightmare called Paul Partain.
Any other questions? You mentioned Texas Chainsaw 3D earlier. What was it like to reprise the roles or reprise the family, get back into it?
That was wonderful. Goodness gracious. All of a sudden, I'm with John and I'm with Gunnar. We're in Shreveport, Louisiana, having a beer and looking at each other and going,
A beer.
do you believe this? What could be more wonderful to think they brought us all back? And the neat thing too was my first time on the set, the producer is so proud. He takes me into the house they totally built with great love to make it exactly like the house that we were in for that wonderful dinner scene. And I mean, the detail, oh my goodness, that was amazing. And you could tell they were very excited and really wanted to make it like the original. And I loved all that
They treated us
care.
very, very nicely too. They were so thrilled to have us there. Like the house too. Carl was so proud. So proud of that when they brought me up the first time, he had a camera operator, I guess it was the woman who, with the two people who were doing the extras features for the DVD or something, behind the scenes stuff. He wanted a reaction shot of me getting out of the van and seeing that house for the first time. That's how proud he was of detail. And they treated us beautifully. And they scheduled us, and all three of us, a day off together so we could just hang out. And we sat
That beer.
Well, went out to lunch and a beer. We sat there until they were starting to drinking, until they started seating people for dinner. We thought, should we go someplace else so this guy can have this table? But it was fun. The check didn't bounce, and there was an air-conditioned trailer where you just sit in. The whole reprisal thing, Carl, however many films they've done, I'd only done Grandpa once, and there was a Grandpa in every one of them, and no one ever called me and even asked me to do Grandpa. And Carl Mascone calls after finding out how to get in touch with me, and says, John, this is Carl, we're doing another Chainsaw film. And I had heard through Kim Henkel that they might want me to do a bit part or something. And he said, we were wondering if you would do us the honor of reprising your role as Grandpa in our new Chainsaw film. And I said, are you kidding me? I've been waiting almost 40 fucking years for this phone call. I'll walk to Louisiana if I have to.
For me, the way that building was built, in the back it was just all particle board, and that's where all the equipment, the tents, the cooling tent, the craft services truck, all of that was set up in the back.
And little explosive devices behind the wall.
Yeah. So when you come in, usually the vans would come from the base camp. They'd come in the back, and that's where people would get unloaded. And that was 2011, and the front of the building is 1973. And my first day, similar to yours, they brought me in the front and dropped me off on the road, and I had to walk down that long driveway. And literally, I'm getting chills walking down the driveway because I'm thinking, it is 1973. It was so exact in the details, and just not only just the building, but just the whole setting of the building was such that it was really chilling to realize how carefully they had done this to make it feel like
John said he always wanted to play Grandpa again. Did they ever ask either of you to be in any sequels?
Yes, Kim Hinkle, when he did The Return, had a wonderful part for me. I was going to get to play a nurse. Oh goodness. I was excited, but Screen Actors Guild frowned on that because it wasn't union. So I decided, well look, if I can't be in your movie, let's just do a little sneaky thing. We're going to put me on a gurney and I'll be kind of like a spaced out mental patient, and no one will ever see it, but it'll be a little, you know, between you and me, Kim. And so I thought it was never really, then I finally saw it, and I see the close-up on this crazy, oh my God. I didn't think I was going to be anonymous. So I was surprised by that, so I guess I was accidentally in that, but not on purpose.
And Paul Partain, I just want to point out, was pushing the gurney in that. So there's kind of a reverse, her pushing Paul's wheelchair in that scene in The Next Generation, which myself and Renee Zellweger, by the way. I got to spend the day with Renee, like this, man. Call me Renee. I thought it was neat that they had Paul pushing Marilyn. And you'd have to be a pretty diehard fan to notice it happened so quickly.
Well, not quickly enough. But I gotta say this. This is one thing that no one speaks of, but they should know. Paul Partain, for like 20 years, I thought Paul was just a real, you know, one of those, just, you know, and people would, and I never talked about it, but Paul had made me so angry that sometimes they say, well, was Paul really like that? And I go, yes, he was Franklin to a T. And then after 20 years, we go to a show together, and he's the nicest, most wonderful guy in the world. And he says, Marilyn, I hope you guys didn't hate me, but I had to stay in character because I was afraid if I ever broke, then we'd become friends and then it wouldn't work. The scenes wouldn't work. You really had to hate Franklin. It benefited the show. And I looked at him, I said, well, God, you could have told me something. I've been telling everybody you're just a big SOB for years. And I meant it, and I never would have. And because he would, they'd yell cut, and he would sit in his wheelchair and go, Sally, get me a coat. I'd say, Paul, get off your butt, you can get your own coat. And he'd sit there going, Sally, and it went on and on. And it really wasn't funny. At first you thought, well, you're supposed to laugh because this is, you do that every take for a year, day after day after day. You just, that guy really got on your nerves. But he was acting. He was acting, he just didn't tell us. And he was the sweetest, nicest guy, so I just wanted you to know that he was a jewel. Just a great actor, but he should have told me sooner.
Paul was the first person, really, that I met on set the first day I was there. And Paul Partain was such a character. He had this white Cadillac convertible with red leather interior, and it was like a 67 or something that had the huge pointy pins on it that, like, if you were riding a bicycle behind it and the guy slammed his brakes on, you were like dead, you know, just like, and the trunk was open and he was sitting in his wheelchair, and but he had two folding like lawn chairs set up. I mean, it was like his Franklin staging area, but nobody was, he was sitting there all alone. And he had the trunk popped open. He goes, and he said, asked me who I was. I told him, and he goes, well, come on over here, partner, join me, you know. And he says, grab yourself something to drink. And he had this gigantic cooler that filled up half of the gigantic trunk, filled with soda pop and cans of Budweiser. So that was my first experience with Paul. And he told me everything he'd done and who he'd studied with. So I never really saw, I understood that when he was on camera, it was the Franklin thing. I didn't get that whole aspect of him never breaking character, because my first experience of him was just that, Paul Partain. You know, sitting with a cold beer in a lawn chair, and it's 105 degrees outside, The crew's all wearing cut-off shorts and snake leggings and nothing else. Jesus, what a summer.
He was very effective in this method because I hated him. I was so looking forward to killing him. Both because I understood that there was a certain acting out there, but also because he was off the set. And so I just couldn't stand the guy. But then I was reintroduced to him. I was in Austin, I gave him a call, or somehow we got connected, we met somewhere for a cup of coffee. And he was such a great guy that after that, every time I was in Austin, I'd go over to his house and we'd cook up a pot of spaghetti, and then we'd sit in the backyard after dinner with a cigar and a glass of brandy and just lie to each other. You know, it was just great. But I wanted to answer that question real fast, and that is yes, in every sequel except the beginning, they approached me about being in the movie. But the attitude basically is, remember in the early 80s, late 70s, there was a Chainsaw sequel in the works that never happened. And one of the producers got in touch with me about coming back to Leatherface. And I said, well, I'd love to do it, but I got to tell you something right away, which is, you got to pay me more than what I got paid for Chainsaw. Because we didn't get anything. We got nothing. And he said, listen, you got to understand something. There are a lot of guys out there who look more like you than you do. And that movie never happened, but that was basically the attitude of every film. It's a guy in a rubber suit. Who cares? So their attitude was, we'll pay you what you have to pay a guy off the street. And to me, it was such an insult, and my attitude always was, offer me something, just something more than union minimum. Even if it had been like $100 a week more, I would have done it. But every one of them said, no, we're going to pay you minimum because that's all you're worth to us.
Not true.
Yeah. But, what, not true that I'm not worth that, or not true that... no, that's exactly what their attitude was, and I think that was one of the great things about the new Chainsaw was the first question they asked my agent was, do you think Gunnar could play Leatherface again? And I took that as an enormous compliment that they would even have the respect to ask that question. And my answer, foolishly, was, no, I'm 40 years older and I have an artificial knee. Now, if I had realized that the movie takes place 40 years later, and Leatherface is actually in his mid-60s, I would have gone, sure, as long as you can double me for the running scenes. But I said, no, I can't, but I'd love to be in the movie, and so I ended up being in the movie. And the reason I wasn't even approached for the beginning was because when they approached me to do the remake, same producers, they wouldn't talk to they ignored my agent. And they called me directly because they thought I was an idiot. And they said to me, now, this time it's going to be a dark psychological horror movie, not a bloodbath like the original. So I said, have you seen the original? Oh, yes. And then this woman said to me, now, and they were offering me the part of the truck driver at the end. It's one day, I have a line. So she says, now, we're being very secretive about the script. And I thought, it's a remake. I've read it. But she said, we're being very secretive about the script, and if you agree to be in our movie, I can arrange it so that you get your pages. And I said, wow, you're going to let me learn my lines and everything. And then, of course, as I've claimed over and over again, I am a whore, but not a cheap whore. They offered me union minimum. So I wasn't in the movie. And that ended so badly because what happened was when the movie came out, they were interviewed for Let Flame Go. And the producers, and they were asked at the end of the interview why I wasn't in the movie. And these idiots, instead of saying, oh, well, we just couldn't come to terms, they said, we really wanted Gunnar in the movie. No one knows who he is, but we would have known. But he wanted $20,000 a day, which is slander, because that prevents me from working with somebody who wants to pay me a lot less. So I called the managing editor and I said, I'm going to send you a piece and I want you to run it right away. And so they posted it the next day, where I called them out and said, these people are liars. This is simply not true and it's slanderous. I would never have said that to them. Because all I ever say is, you got to help me more. And which is the chief work. And after that, of course, they had no interest at all in having me do anything with the treatment. So anyway, a long and bitter story that you can ask for.
Questions from the audience?
I've always had a special kinship with the movie because I was born on August 18th. Was there any special significance why they choose August 18th?
Oh, it was Terry's birthday.
But I don't think that when they wrote it, they knew that. I've never really asked him. I will, now that you brought that up. That's a question I've never thought about. But actually, I never paid attention to the date until Terry said, well, that was my birthday. And that was just kind of recently. So the next time I might call him when I get back and ask him, why did you pick that day? Yeah, I'm going to do that, because now you got me curious.
We were shooting on August 18th, and I'm thinking about the production schedule. I think the production schedule didn't end then. I think we were shooting after that day. Terry says that was our last day of shooting. But I think, according to the schedule, we were shooting for several months.
Beats me. Could be just a random day.
Well, actually, I just picked
818.
Just want to ask, do any of you have your costumes, any props, anything like that from the original production still? And also, do any one of you, any of you, at any time during the production, did you ever go like to the local bar to get a beer or buy a Coke at a store with your makeup on or anything like that? Did you ever let anybody?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, you know.
It's just not done.
No, lots of guys. Lance Hendricks, what's his name? Hendrickson. Yeah, he did that as Jesse, and a lot of guys have done that where they'll go by a bar or something with their makeup still on just to freak people out, you know.
No, I actually
in
never,
Texas, I can
ever,
see somebody
ever
shooting
thought
from
of
the
going
pickup,
anywhere
you know.
looking all attractive.
At the end of the day, we would be so exhausted. There would be some who would remain unnamed, who would go out and party all night, and the writer, who was also one of the producers, would have to show up at his house, but he won't be named. He's not here, and pick him up at 5 in the morning, make sure he was on set. But the rest of us would go home and take a bath and sleep.
There's also the way that I was educated in the theater. There's a basic rule: you never leave the theater with your makeup. Never. I don't know where that comes from, but it just isn't done. You know, that's something you leave behind.
I do have several trunks full of chainsaw memorabilia. I think I collected every single article, you name it, I kept it, and I still have it. And, but it's come in handy for some projects, and I guess the collection keeps growing, and it's surprising, because now there's all the press on the 3D, and it's interesting to see the reaction too.
When you're at the conventions, do you see a lot more merchandise you pick up? Toys,
Oh, I have toys and everything, but after a while, you can't possibly get all the toys. I think when I stopped was, I've had all these different formats they keep sending me. Now it's on VCR, it's on DVD, it's on da-da-da. And then finally they sent me this huge record, and I don't know what to call that one, but...
Laserdisc.
Yes, and that's when I went, I'm not buying any more machines, because these machines are lasting just a few weeks till they send me something else in another format. So there was a point where I had to stop that one.
I don't have anything. Really, all of my stuff, all the stuff that I got from my publicity package and all that in 1974 was stolen off the roof rack of my car in Sykeston, Missouri, if anybody's from there. and have my shit, I'd like it back, please. And I'm just not I'm not a collector. I don't collect things, people. So I really don't. And I would like to see a grandpa figure, but nobody's really ever come up with a decent one. I've been approached several times by artists who said they really want to do one, and I never hear from them again. I've seen one or two that have grandpa who looks pretty good, but he's in a wheelchair, and I don't know what it is with people, but they swear that grandpa's in a wheelchair. He is in a rocking chair. I even had to call Carl Mascone when I read the script and correct him on some things, and one of the things which was very important to me is Grandpa's not in a wheelchair. Grandpa's sitting in his wheelchair. Carl, he's not in a wheelchair. He is in a rocking chair. Well, thank you very much, but let's know that I'll get it fixed. But as far as collecting things, I trade with vendors and other actors and stuff, but no, to answer your question, no.
I have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre lunchbox. I love that, but I'm also not a collector, so I just don't accumulate that stuff. The lunchbox is, I just think it's so cool. I wish I had it when I was 7 years old. I would have been taking that to school.
I could have walked right off of the set with my entire costume. It just never dawned on me to do it. And now I wish I would have, although I probably would have left it behind in a storage unit or something. Everything I've ever owned, I've left behind.
Wait a second, though. Yesterday I heard, this is kind of upsetting because I should have taken something. Vera Sawyer Parsons' gravestone just sold for an amazing amount of money. And I thought, darn. So somewhere on the internet you can look up the exact price, but it was quite a pricey figure. Then I heard they sold the nightgown that I wore in the scene where I'm writing the letter for $300 or $400. And I just wanted to tell everybody out there, I tried on maybe 20 nightgowns to make sure it was just going to be the right one. And probably those 20 that are out there will be available anytime if anyone wants perhaps one of the nightgowns we didn't wear.
Then there'll be a nightgown almost worn by Marilyn Burns.
Yeah, almost worn. That would be really important. You never know.
Any questions here? Right here.
I know the dinner scene was considered like one of the worst shoots ever. Can you tell us a little bit more about how bad that was about her just like 28 hours?
Who wants to take this?
Well, let me start.
4 right to left.
Okay, first of all, I did not smell as bad as they claimed I did.
Shit. That's the biggest pile of crap
I know. No, they wouldn't wash my wardrobe. So I wore the same clothes for 28 days straight at 100 degrees. And the smell was so bad. First of all, the set smelled anyway, because there was all this outgassing from these dead animals and animal skins on the wall. And then we're in a room that's probably 120 degrees. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
That's not an exaggeration. No, we had 20,000 watts of light up. The windows were closed.
Yeah. And so that room was so hot in there that the head cheese that was in front of Grandpa, we'd have to switch it out every couple hours because it would rot. It would go bad that fast. So, and then you had Leatherface, and we would take a break to just, like while we set up a shot. And someone said that they were outside. Oh, it was Larry Carroll, who's the editor. He said he arrived on the set because he would come out every day to just see how the shoot was going. And then said he arrived that night just as the entire cast and crew came bursting out of the house, gagging because of the smell. And then finally we broke for lunch, and I got behind him. The crew member in front of me said, "You fucking stink, get out of the line." And it was true. I smelled so bad that I actually went to Bill Barnes, who was the surgeon who designed grandpa's face. And I said, do you have any nausea medication? He gave me some nausea pills, and I went and lay down because it was so bad that I could smell it. And so I agree that probably the biggest contributor in more ways than one to the misery of the shooting. There are plenty of other aspects.
There were so many aspects during that. I guess it is what it looks like. Recently, somebody sent some pictures and that were taken during the dinner scene. I finally figured out who they were. They were taken by Dr. Barnes, who had done John's makeup. So he was a photographer also. He was an amazing, talented doctor. And he took different shots while we were shooting the dinner scene. And he was, very quiet, and none of us knew he was really there because we were so involved in doing the right, things that the director wanted. And you could see that during the breaks, I'm just sitting there like, just waiting for the next shot. There was no reason to get up, go anywhere, feel anything. It was just like you're in a daze. And I think another thing was the director, Toby, wanted, this was very important to him. He wanted everybody's point of view. So you have the hitchhiker's point of view, Leatherface's point of view, Grandpa's point of view, my point of view, you name it, everybody's point of view. And then we had the other shots. We're going to have everybody's, the other, he just took shot after shot to cover the whole thing. Get a round, go around shot, get a wide shot, we took so many shots, and in the meantime, there's all this hysteria that's going on as we shoot this picture, and we're doing it over and over and over, and it becomes creepier and creepier, especially when the guys come leering at me, and they just keep coming and coming and coming, and they just keep coming. And finally, my hands and knees are tied to a chair, and I just am trying to get away from them, and my chair just falls over, and I lay there all tied up. And I just lay there, and they just go, oh, damn. She went out of frame. Well, I'm on the floor. And they go, well, I guess we have enough for that one. Let's go ahead and move on to the next scene. Well, I'm still down here, And everybody's getting up and shifting and about going to their business. And I'm kind of like, and, they're totally ignoring me. And then someone goes, oh yeah, get the girl. It's kind of like telling, they helped, the actors were treated tremendously. We all felt like kings and queens.
So
get the
fun.
girl, and you get out of line, you stink.
The smell was certainly a consideration. It was very, very bad. So many things contributed to why that was such an awful scene to shoot. The heat was a huge factor, particularly for me and Gunn, because of liquid latex plastered to your face, which you couldn't take off. And I'm wearing a wool suit, starched shirt, tie, and it probably was 120 degrees in there. And also the length, the length of time it took us to do that it was a combination of the uncomfortable heat, the long hours, the smell, everything contributed to why that was a horrible scene to shoot, but also it contributed to why the scene turned out so well, I think, because back in the 70s there was a movement in group therapy. They were called marathon groups. Do you remember this? Where you would sit with a group and stay up for an entire weekend. So sleep deprivation affects you in certain ways. And after a while, people's defenses start breaking down and ugly shit starts coming out. And I think there was a bit of that going on there as well. So as I don't know if it was Gunn that said this once, or Ed, where there was a point where it's like, and like he did so much coverage on this, every minute angle, you wouldn't believe it, and we're all suffering physically terribly because of this. There's a point where it's like, yeah, let's fucking kill her and go home. Let's just fucking kill her. And I want to go, I want to shower, I want the shit off me, I want a fucking cold beer, and I want 10 hours of sleep. So let's just kill her.
Yeah, that happened to me because I was always poo-pooing this method business because it's so idiotic that I don't want to become Leatherface. But in the scene, toward the end, where we're actually trying to kill Sally, we were hitting her with a hammer, and there's a point where they're just getting for frenzy, and they're going, kill her! Kill her! Kill a bitch! Like that. And right at that point, Sally jumps up because Grandpa's, dropped the hammer again, and the hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker lets go of Sally so he can grab the hammer. Sally jumps up. So Sally jumps up. Marilyn jumps up and turns to run out the door, and I'm there off of the bucket, and he's screaming that. And when she jumps up, I had this psychotic moment. I said to myself, kill the bitch. I did. And I turned to kill her. I mean, I did. I turned and it was kill the bitch. And I turned to kill you. And my physical movement took me out of being Leatherface. And I went, oh, wait a minute, it's a movie. And that was the one point in the movie where I just lost any sense of that thing. But that was that madness of it. We don't know how long the thing took. Some of us think it was 26 hours. Some have said up to 30 hours. But I think it was 28 hours, something like that. But it was
24. That's all I know.
Yeah, it was just total insanity. And like you said, there was so much coverage for the dinner scene. Usually, in the scene, you shoot a master shot, which is it's the shot that establishes the room. It's a big shot. You see everybody. Toby and then you do your close-ups and your two shots or whatever. Toby wanted 2 master shots, but when he got all the coverage, so just at the dinner table, he wanted at least 10 good takes, 10 different angles. He wanted at least 10 different shots for that scene. And all the cutaway stuff, all of the 2 shots and the close-ups, he shot the entire scene to get. If he wanted my close-up for the entire scene, with the camera only on me or only on Grandpa, and the timing had to be perfect to make it easier to cut. If the master shot, the first master was, let's say, 3 minutes and 53 seconds, so was the second master that we decided was good. So was the close shot. So was the two shot of Grandpa and Cook. The Cook and the hitchhiker. So what it meant was to get, and we were efficient. I mean, we got a, I talked to one of the guys that did the first commentary track when they did the Laserdisc, and he said it's amazing to look at the outtakes because the acting is dead on in every outtake. The problems. The reason the shot wasn't used is not the acting, it's because there's a technical problem. So we were dead on with that. But still, and I talked to a couple of people about this, including Danny, the cinematographer, to get the dinner scene, we had to shoot somewhere between 25 and 30 takes to do that. So, there's 15 hours just for that part of the scene.
Looking at you, Bubba.
Yeah.
So one more question. I'd like to know what you guys thought of seeing the original footage in 3D at the beginning of Texas Chainsaw 3D.
I don't know. I'm going to have to go see that again because I saw the 3D in the title and I put my hands up. I saw the saw coming out and I put my hands up. And, but the 3D I didn't see that. I mean, I saw the movie, but I don't remember seeing that in 3D. Did it really jump out? What is
As far as you talking about the archival footage? Yeah. I can't look at the original film objectively in any way, shape, or form. Never have been able to, having been there. So I'm with Marilyn. I didn't really notice that the archival footage was in 3D because I was looking at, I guess I look at it from totally different aspect than a fan would look at it. So I didn't realize that. You know, I remember certain 3D aspects of the whole film, but I don't recall it being in 3D.
I didn't see it in 3D. I did in the movies, so I just didn't see it. So when I was watching the archival footage, I was impressed with how they had vignetted all the shots.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So I have no idea how it looked in 3D. In fact, I didn't even notice until the second time that was Bill Moseley playing Jim Seabass part.
No, was it?
It was, yeah. And I remember when they filmed that because it was. Yes. Yeah, and what they did was they set up a monitor, and they're showing. They set up a monitor for Bill in the dining room, and he's looking at the monitor, and he watches and the monitor he's staring at Jim Seadow, the way he played that dinner scene. And then I saw him shooting this. Then they played with the sound on, and Bill would walk around, and he's like replaying Jim's movements. And then they took that and put that in. So the shots there of Bill. I'll be damned.
I know that they put him in there. I just saw Jim, and then I saw Bill later as some, his character. I need to see it again. I knew they did that by hearing it through the grapevine. In fact, I talked to Bill last night about it. But about being seed out. But I did not know they actually put.
So is there no archival footage?
Put Bill in
at
the.
all in this?
No.
There isn't?
No, the stuff. I mean, it's Jim's body apparently. Well, maybe it's not even Jim's body. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But I just didn't notice it the first time I looked at it. I was so impressed with the fact that how long is that opening sequence? Is it like a minute and a half? It's really only something like that. And I thought, they told the whole story in 90 seconds. How did they pull that off? And that's what I was reacting.
Well, I'm Neil Jones from Without Your Head. Let's hear it for Jim Dugan. Marilyn Burns. And Gunnar Hansen.
Thank
Thank you.
you, guys. Just thanks for being our fans for so many years. Come here, Neil.
Like